Dominique, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm excited to talk to you for this next hour.
Thank you, Nico. Thanks for inviting me. It's always a privilege and a pleasure to be asked to talk about stuff like this. And when you first spoke to me about this, I thought this sounds like a really cool project. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think what I'm most excited about is that throughout our previous conversations, you have brought me a lot of knowledge that I never heard about. And the first thing I want to jump in is the Portofolio career. It was a new concept for me and it makes sense. So I would like you to start with presenting me what it is and how does your career look like?
Sure. So a portfolio career effectively is where you have multiple different activities with different types of clients or maybe employers or whatnot. So of course, if you're doing different things for the same employer, it's not a portfolio career. But if you were to have 3 or 4 different clients, or maybe very different activities, operational activities of your professional elements that you do, work that you would do, that would be qualified as a portfolio career. So in my case, I work as a career advisor and coach, where I support people in the career transition. And within that area, I work with MBA students, with executive MBAs, with individuals, with people in career transition who've lost their jobs, so outplacement. I also have some work I do lectures and workshops, specifically in the areas of business dating, which is networking, personal branding, LinkedIn. And then I do things I have 1 or 2 contracts in IT. So this is very different to the career advisory. And I have a mandate in sport event management where I look at media operations and communications. And then I do a few odd jobs here and there. So it's very mixed, very diverse. What I love about it is that, let's be honest, no job is perfect. And this allows me to create a lot of variety, keeps me interested, keeps me stimulated, constantly changing. It just makes everything so much more pleasurable and enjoyable.
Yeah, we talk about transferable skills, but there must be also transferable knowledge here that you go towards the different departments of your life, if we can say. What are the knowledge transfer that you do the most between these different sides of your portfolio?
Yeah, I think the common thread that you're referring to is people. And something that I absolutely love. And I'm a big believer that people are the most important asset of anything we do, whether it be our own career advancement, it's the network of people we know and the contacts we know, whether you are looking at a company and you can have the best product, but if you don't have people to bring everything together, it's worth nothing at the end of the day. So, and even if you just look at your customers at the end of the day, those are still people, right? So you have people from your absolute key, and they're really the centerpiece of everything. So if I look at my work, obviously career advisory, I've got my clients, the individuals in front of me, and that's what I love the most because it's so diverse. Yes. Typically every year I'm working with around 25 to 30 different nationalities. Across the different areas I mentioned, MBAs, typical average age is around 30, executive MBAs, they're between 40 and 55, 35 and 55. Outplacement, they can go up all the way up to retirement, right? 64, 65-year-olds, and as young as 30, early 30s. So you have this diversity of people that's so rich and so fantastic. If I look at the IT-related stuff, for me, the person element is that technology has to elevate the people around you and get them to work as efficiently as possible. It shouldn't become a burden, and it's not about replacing them or anything like that. And the customer service is the element that I love the best. And when it comes to media operations, again, it's about allowing media and journalists to operate the best they can, to work in the best type of conditions. And that's where the people element comes in again, right? So for me, probably the common thread is people. In terms of knowledge and advice that I convey, it's really the IT and the event operations is really service focused. The career advisory is everything related to career transition. So it's very diverse.
Yeah, and it resonates a lot with a previous interview of yours where you shared that work is about providing value, and really what I understand is that you want to provide value to the human in front of you, and it's about how in the time that we're allotted in these projects, am I going to help this person that ultimately is going to help this organization or this project? Yes. So that's pretty cool. And I guess you're working with people in St. Gallen, with students in St. Gallen that's just graduated or are going to graduate, right? You're helping them in their transition. This is an exciting time of their lives, no? There's something good about that.
Yeah, there is. And actually, I got into career advisory. We often throw the word coaching around very loosely. It's not coaching that we're doing, it's really advisory work.
Can you define coaching before we continue with the discussion?
Absolutely. So coaching is very much where we believe that the individual in front of us has the answers to all the challenges or problems or solutions that they're looking for.
Yes.
The person in front of us is not broken. So if you come to me with a challenge and we're doing pure coaching, I'm going to ask what we call powerful questions, or questions to get you to start to dig deep and have a lot of introspection to find the solution. As soon as I start saying to you, have you considered this or that, or do this or that, I'm advising.
Yes.
So when we're looking at career advisory, we're looking at, we sit down in a session together and I'm going to say to you, Nico, okay, you've got to start networking. Let's map out a networking strategy. You've got to do this, this, this. Let's, so that's more an advisory. That's really the difference. So, and I only make that distinction because a lot of people throw this word coaching around very, very loosely. So with the St. Gallen students, with the IMD executive MBAs and students and whatnot, with outplacement clients, it's very much more of an advisory type of role where you're supporting individuals, because in career transition, very often people are looking at a switch in industry, people are looking at a switch in function, maybe a geographical switch. They just don't necessarily know. So there's no point in asking them question after question if they don't necessarily have the answer. When it comes to introspection in terms of what do you want to do next, or what excites you, where do you get your energy, or look back at a moment in your career where you were energized, that's different. That's more coaching, right?
Yes.
So just to make a little bit of the difference between the two.
That's interesting. What is the most frequent question you ask to these students? Is there one question that's a lot of the time the students or the person looking forward in his or her career has to ask himself or herself?
I think it depends on the age and the maturity of the people in front of us. So I know when we're looking at the outplacement clients that are typically on an older side of the spectrum, executive MBAs are the same. There's a lot more, let's say, water under the bridge in terms of experience.
Yes.
And so things like, you can dig deep in terms of things that they've done in the past, maybe 20 years earlier, to understand where they have got their energy from, what they enjoy doing, what they dislike doing. But you can also ask them questions, how do you want to be remembered? Right? When you retire in 20 years from now, or 15 years from now, in some cases 10 years from now, if you look back, how do you want to be remembered? And it's a powerful question because a lot of people haven't given it any consideration. Either as a professional or even privately. Like, how do you want to be remembered by friends, family, clients, other professional stakeholders? It doesn't really matter. But that's a pretty thought-provoking question, right? So
Yes, it is. And especially I think it's not, at my age, at 24, maybe it's not the question that I would ask myself first. I would not ask myself about legacy maybe at the beginning of the career, because everything's still open. I don't know me, but people in general, they have the potential, they have the dreams, and so they also have to determine where is the passion and the drive to then say, okay, I want to have an impact in this industry for this legacy. So I also, I agree. It's a question that I see myself maybe having more central in my head later in my career.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation. I think you can start reflecting on it now already. I think it's never too early to start reflecting on it, because the question of how do I want to be remembered would be, and that can change with time, and that's okay. But it's how we treat people, it's how we turn up, it's how we are present or not present, and it's just that very often the question tends to hit home very often with an older group, a more mature group, a more experienced group. But it's a question you can start asking yourself already at 25 or 20 years old or whatnot. It's not a question that has a specific moment in time that we should be asking that. It's just that probably the reflection is a bit different for the very reasons you mentioned.
Yeah, but you know what? I completely agree with you. I think it relates. I learned an interesting advice, an interesting quote of. You might not be the smartest, but a lot of smart people have these goals that go for every 3 years or every 5 years. But if you set yourself in the long term, you will have an advantage over those people that might be smarter than you, have other networks, other opportunities, because you are setting yourself slowly but surely towards a place you want to be in. And
Yes.
so what you're saying makes sense. It should be a question that also the younger students, younger graduates ask themselves, because ultimately I think, and we're going to make a parallel with the sports career, it's about consistency over long periods of time.
Yes.
So absolutely. So I guess with that in mind, have you followed people throughout a certain number of years, or was it especially at this graduate batch or this place? Like, how has it gone for that spectrum?
Yeah, for the majority of people, at least the ones I work with in education,
Yes.
but typically they come in as students. You're working with them on and off, some of them more intensely than others, until graduation.
Okay.
In the MBA world, typically we continue a few months after graduation for various reasons, and that's how the international standards measure certain programs, right? So there's a certain timeline that we follow them for.
Okay.
So that's the majority. In some cases, maybe a year or 2 or 3 or 4 years later, they come back and they say, let's can we have another discussion around something?
Yeah.
So just this last week, I spoke to a graduate that I'd worked with in 2020, and he came back because he wanted to discuss things around salary negotiation for a new opportunity. And the reason why he came back is we had that relationship from 2020, that level of trust, so that and of course that's also part of the service.
Yeah.
So we did that, but very often there is a time duration,
Okay.
and it's quite rare, I'd say, that there is a continuation a few years later, but it can happen.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess you are associated also to the help at that moment on maybe salary negotiation, on finding a job, on talking about opportunities. So it's like, oh, Dominique, like let's go again for that's practical. That's good.
Yeah.
That's very good. How do these people inspire you on a daily or a weekly basis?
Yeah, I think the most inspirational, because I do meet some very, very inspirational people along the way. You've inspired me on many levels as well. Your personal story that maybe we'll touch on a bit later, from the shift from competitive ice hockey to refereeing, and your trajectory. I think that was fantastic. And just little things like, for me, mindset and how we see situations is so energizing. And it doesn't matter, when we're talking about this, it doesn't matter if one is 15 years old or 70 years old, right? This is about really state of mind. And I think, so now I'm jumping all over the place, but I think sport helps form that to an extent, or let's say performance, whether it doesn't have to be sport, it can also be music, art, or whatnot. Yeah. But I meet these inspirational people on a regular basis. But for me, what really triggers that like wow factor are their personal stories. And we were talking about it a little bit before while we were setting up. Yes. And I've met some phenomenal individuals, and I look at them and go, you've got such an amazing personal story, but so many people don't want to tell their personal story because they don't think it's that great, or they don't think it's inspiring, or they're ashamed of it in some cases. And I'm like, wow, it's the personal stories is really what makes us unique and separates us from the rest. And it's almost a pity that people are quite shy about their personal stories, because really that's when I meet those people with those special things that have happened to them in their life and that journey, it's remarkable.
Yes, I completely agree. Like when you meet someone, and I would just meet you like this, or I would know a bit more about your personal story, and then I see like the movements and the trajectory, the angles, the challenges, the successes. It gives a whole new dimension to our interaction and to our future interactions. So I think it's pretty cool. I think it's the right occasion maybe for you to share a bit more of your trajectory, and maybe also mention like your involvement in sports and how you evolved in these years.
Yeah, so I started my sporting, I don't know if you can call it a career, but sporting a competitive sport as a swimmer when I was quite young, and I was doing pretty well for my age group at the time. And then various things happened that kind of derailed that. That to this day I still don't put my finger on it, but it remains a frustration as we to this very day. Yeah. I shifted to water polo, just because the logic at the time was like, you swim well, why don't you stop playing water polo? And I had a lot of fun in water polo. I experienced a lot of things. I didn't have the talent, the ball skills to really take it to another level. But the water polo was enjoyable. I came from a culture, South Africa.
Yeah.
I grew up in there. I'm a half Swiss, but I did grow up in the South African culture where sport is absolutely centered to everything you do. You do it at school. Schools compete against each other. You don't do many sports in clubs. So there's certain core sports that they drive home that you sometimes have to do. So I had to play rugby. I was at a traditional school where rugby was put almost on a mantelpiece, and if you didn't play it, there was almost a problem with you. Yeah. So I did it not because I enjoy watching the game. I didn't enjoy playing the game, to be honest with you. But you'd play against competing schools, and match days would pull thousands of people to come and watch some of the big matches. So it's really something that is difficult to explain if one hasn't been exposed to it, because it really is a big deal. But so sport has always been, competitive sport has always been core there. But I'd really, the swimming was something quite special for me. When I got to Switzerland, I tried to get back into swimming. Working in parallel to training is just very, very difficult and complicated, as you can imagine. And then I got into triathlon. There was actually a competition, not a competition, it was like a challenge to get people more active that was taking place in the Lausanne area. And at the time it was called the Défi Lausannois. So basically you could do several events and you'd get little stamps on these different events. And I like a challenge. So I received it in the post one day. I saw all these things. There was a marathon, there was a triathlon, there was all this stuff. So I immediately signed up for it all, and I did marathon, triathlon and whatnot. And that was how I got into triathlon. And then I joined a triathlon club, went onto the amateur circuit in Switzerland, where I competed for 2 years, did my Ironman in 2009. And then my first son was born, so that kind of put a lot of the, let's say, competitive element on the shelf for a while. But I maintained the running and the swimming and whatnot over the years. Tried to get back into water polo, played a bit, and so it's kind of been on and off. It's there, right? Once you've got the bug, you don't lose it very easily. But it's how that helps me today, I think it's given me a very positive mindset in terms of how to approach a situation. You know it from competitive sport. If something goes wrong in the moment, there's no point in collapsing on the ground and crying about it. You kind of got to pick yourself up, look for the next opportunity, whether it's a team sport. If you drop the ball, you can't let your team down, right? If you're competing individually, you only have yourself to blame if something goes wrong. And I think those sort of lessons that you pick up on the journey, for me at least, definitely have transferred into my professional career, and it's immensely beneficial.
Yeah, I imagine because the social elements, but also your personal strength and grit or commitment to yourself, there's something very powerful. I was surprised at first knowing that you first thinking you were only a swimmer, because I'm impressed by your social skills, and usually in my head, so someone has played a team sport, someone has the social dynamic of understanding of situation. You interacted with classmates at the same time, and I was like, oh wow, this is clearly a team sport. And then you're like, no, but there's swimming and there's triathlon and there's also my relationship with myself, and I find. Yeah, and you're telling me that this is something important for you and something that has given you a lot of competitive edge or of will in your life. Oh, that's amazing.
That's true, and it's interesting you should say that, because something I picked up in a lot of discussions. And I remember back in 2008 when I was working with the ASTS students, and somebody said, "There's no I in team." And I said to him, that's nonsense. There are very often, depending on the team, you can have a lot of individuals, and your team's not going to function very well. And there's this perception that in individual sports, the team doesn't matter. It's all about the individual. But actually, in an individual sport, the team is everything. And as coming from swimming, in its absolute, you're staring at a black line, swimming up and down. And when you finish a set, you look up, and it's the eyes of your fellow swimmers that keep you going, right? You're looking in each other's eyes. You're all in it together. You're going, how many more do we have to do? 5 more. I don't know, 100 butterflies, leaving every whatever it is, 130, and you just go, okay, if you're doing it, I'm doing it, we're all doing it together. And you're not saying it obviously because you're trying to catch your breath and keep yourself together, but you all kind of know you're in it together, right? And at the end of training, you have a chat, you have a laugh, you turn up the next day, you see each other, and you kind of like, let's do it again, right?
Yes.
And that's something that people don't realize. It's in individual sports, it's your teammates that pull you through. You have yourself to blame if things don't work out, but it's the people around you that keep you going.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I thought, yes, team sports, there's a communication. When you're swimming, there's not that much communication, but that's true. It's a matter of perception and of seeing the person next to me is trying his best or her best as well. Like, let's continue that together. So I have the perfect question right now. How important it is to assemble a good team, a positive team for your life? Like, how important is entourage for you?
Yeah, it's absolutely critical. It's such a great question. Everything from obviously the people you socialize with, to your partner, to your colleagues, right, and your clients and whatnot. So it's absolutely critical. It's I'm a big believer, as I mentioned earlier, that people are fundamentally the most important element of any organization or any team or any group or any basically fundamental to success.
Yes.
So no, it's absolutely critical. And there was a saying, and I can't remember exactly how it went, but it went something along the lines of you are as good as your weakest link, if I'm not mistaken, or something along those lines. So basically, if you surround yourself with people that are negative, that are not forward thinking, that are not going to maybe take a little bit of risk when needed, or not take a risk when it's not a good idea to take a risk, or whatever it is, you're going to be kept in that type of bubble. And if you're really looking at elevating yourself, you need to look at people who challenge themselves all the time, right? So that's not to say that people have bad intent. It's just that the people you surround yourself with are going to play a role, whether directly or indirectly, in how successful you'll be.
That's so interesting also to put it as the weakest link puts everyone down, because in a team setting, it's often the case. There's often one turbulent, especially when we're younger as well, there's often one turbulent person at the bottom that might have enough influence to say to the others, no, I'm too tired for this practice. Let's go for, I mean, not a beer if you're younger, but let's go and miss practice or something. So yeah, I agree. There's this component of maybe some personalities not being aligned with your own objectives, and maybe it's not necessarily weakest in terms of intensity or talent or smartness, but maybe it's also alignment.
Yes, exactly. I think alignment is a good alignment and compatibility. I think those are the you're right. It's not necessarily the brightest or the most talented. It's also about attitude and mindset and determination, if you want.
Yes.
So,
Which rebounds to the saying I learned, not the weakest links. The one I heard was you're not maybe the sum of the 5 people you're the most close to.
Yeah, and that's probably what I'd heard, and I butchered it completely. So
yours was good as well.
Yeah. There is a theory about the weakest link, but it's from networking, and it means something different. So I think I'm on I think the sum of the 5 people sounds about right.
Okay. Yours made sense as well.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Nice. You mentioned your partner as well, and I've seen some cool videos on social media. So maybe I will dive straight into that. Tell me about the Mongol 100.
Yeah. So Catherine is my partner's name, and she kind of roped me into it. But I mean, she knew me well enough to say, Dominic will not say no, because I like these types of challenges.
Yes.
So I like the challenge, but she did rope me into it, and I gladly accepted. But effectively, it's a 100-mile, let's call it a race, but there's no timing, there's no classification at the end or anything like that. Over 4 days on a frozen lake in northern Mongolia called Lake Kovsgol. Okay. And Lake Kovsgol is one of the world's ancient lakes. I didn't know that there was such a thing as ancient lakes until I signed up for this. And ancient lakes, if I'm not mistaken, are lakes that are more than 1 million years old. So basically when the continents were, I think, still together, or some of them were still together, that's when these ancient lakes started to appear. And Lake Kovsgol is, I think, about 2 million years old or something crazy like that. But it's absolutely beautiful. It's northern Mongolia, close to the border of Russia. It's about 100 miles long. So we literally went from the top of the lake to the bottom. But it was a phenomenal adventure and experience. We flew from Switzerland directly to Ulaanbaatar. We timed it because I had to work on the Friday. We timed it so we literally arrived last flight in to be able to do the race. Jumped into cars, drove 15-16 hours straight up to what they call the Gur tourist camp where we were staying. There's no running water because everything's frozen. The sanitary is, which was one of my challenges. Sanitary is interesting. It's not dirty. It's just different, right?
Yes.
It's actually incredibly. At such cold temperatures, it's actually relatively clean. It's not. It's not. It's not dirty basically. But still, no running water, no showers, nothing. You're not sweating because it's so cold, unless you obviously if you start running and that sort of thing. But then you've got to be careful because if you start to sweat, you can generate snow in your jacket because it starts to freeze. So you've got to manage the body temperature. But then we had 1 or 2 days. They drove us to the top of Lake Kovsgol, which is another 5-6 hour drive, 100 miles on very slippery ice, right? So you can't go that fast. Absolutely pristine. And then we started, and it was literally 40 kilometers the first day, 30 kilometers the second, 42 the third, and around 27, 28 the last day. It probably doesn't work out to be exactly 100 miles. I think it's probably more marketing purposes. It sounds good, but it was tough. Toughest thing I've ever done. I've done marathons. I've done an Ironman. I did last year a 4-day ultra swim over 33.3 kilometers in Montenegro. And I use that as a comparison because on the day 3, 10.5 kilometer swim, got out tired. You have great food, massage, 5-star hotel, you're taken care of. Lake Kovsgol in Mongolia, there's none of that. You finish your day and you have no running water. You have dehydrated expedition food that you have to rehydrate and start to eat. You have a bonfire to try and keep you warm, but it's minus 35, minus 40 degrees outside. So you're always in survival mode. And you get through day 1 relatively easily, 40 kilometers walking on softish snow. But then by day 2, you're starting to get accumulated fatigue. And then day 3 was very slow going because it was sections of the lake had no more snow on it, so it was very slippery. We decided not to put our crampons on for whatever reason. That was my bad idea. So we went really slowly, and then we had to run to finish before 7 o'clock, before nightfall came for security reasons. So it was just very incredibly exhausting, but an amazing experience, once in a lifetime experience. So that was pretty cool.
That's amazing. Yeah, because the podcast name is Challengers, I was going to ask you what was your most difficult challenge. But if it's this one, that's pretty impressive, right?
Yeah, I think it was that one. I mean, in these moments you finish and you go, that was the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
Was it really the hardest thing? I think it was, just because of that element of you're always in survival mode.
Yes.
Each individual day was not the problem. It was the accumulation.
Yes.
And then the fact that you're not sleeping in a proper bed, you're not sleeping in a nice ambient temperatured room. It's either freezing cold or boiling hot.
Yes.
Not so much in the teepees, it was really just cold, but in the Gur camps where they stoke the fire, it goes up to sauna like temperatures, and then as it cools down you get to freezing conditions. So it's you're never comfortable, let's put it that way, or if you're comfortable it's for very short periods of time. But it was a great experience, and
you were able to share it, so that's also that's pretty cool as well.
Yeah, it was very cool. So I shared it with obviously Catherine. There were other participants, and then did the social media videos afterwards, which it was nice to share it and link it up with life, careers, whatnot. Yeah,
tell me more about the socials, because you are also an expert in personal branding, and these videos, these posts, struck me as not something of showing yourself doing something. You know, there's a lot of people, especially on LinkedIn nowadays, trying to put forward their experience or something in a maybe not very subtle way. But what struck me with your post is that it was inspirational, it was authentic. There was learnings inside it. There was also your face. I invite people to look on LinkedIn your face. You know, you see it's an adventure. You know, so tell me of your choice of sharing that on social medias.
Yes.
And also the reasons behind it.
So I'm always looking for things that I can share online. I don't like it because I always have a little bit of imposter syndrome. So I do feel like, is this is this going to work or not? Will people appreciate this? But the philosophy that I have, there's a term called social selling. And what social selling implies is that we need to provide value to our audience. Again, going to this notion of value, everything we do, right?
Yes.
Self-promotion is different. So if we'd taken that example and I'd said in a video, I said, look at me, I'm on Lake Kovsgol, look how amazing it is, I'm so tough, I'm going to do this, me, that's self-promotion.
Yeah.
By sending a message saying, well, this is what I'm learning, and this is how I can relate it to the people I work with. This is how I can relate it to not necessarily life, although there are life messages in there too, but I think maybe that's too high level, but specifically to careers. And there's so many parallels with sport or physical activity or challenge and career transition. I think arguably career transition is even harder because it's over a longer period of time, typically psychologically incredibly tough for people. But so there are a lot of parallels, but it's always about how do I create value for my audience? What is the message behind it? And you're right, a lot of people don't get that right. They think it's about promoting themselves, and it's not. It's about social selling, and the word is confusing because there's this word selling in it, and there's often a lot of negative connotation around selling.
Yeah.
But social selling implies I'm creating value for my audience. So before I would film anything, I'd say, what is the message I want from my audience? Once I'd figured out what the message was, then I would film. And sometimes I'd think about it for a few hours while I was walking. I had a lot of time to think.
Yeah.
So I was walking, thinking. And then sometimes it would just pop up, okay, this is the message today. And then I'd film around the message. But I don't do it often enough. I should do it more frequently. That was a great example of being able to follow 4 days. The swim last year, I did also 4-day videos, plus a pre-event post,
Okay.
talking about my own imposter syndrome and all the negative noise coming into my head about what could go wrong.
Yes.
Which is something that's one of the biggest challenges people have in career transition, is all that negative noise. They start to get rejections. They start, whether it be job application rejections or whether it be people not wanting to talk to them from a networking perspective or people telling them that they're not going to succeed. All this negative noise, right?
Yes.
So, and which is very, very difficult and to manage. So that's a little bit the messaging that I was trying to convey on both last year and this year.
That's so interesting, especially for maybe the athletes that are listening to us, because I feel a lot of friends are as well, you mentioned imposter syndrome, or as well thinking to themselves, well, yeah, there's the Olympic gold medalist doing the exact same stories as me. Of course, I want to be the gold Olympic medalist, but I'm not. So what am I sharing? What am I? And what you're proposing here is that the athlete asks himself or herself during the learning process, during the challenge, during the training, what am I learning? What can I share valuable to what's something valuable I can share to the audience? And this might help them fight this imposter syndrome on social medias. And we know that athletes, they need a social media presence if they want the sponsors, if they want the contact with the fans. And so this is, I think, a very good solution. I will try to remember that social selling to share online in a meaningful way.
Yes, exactly. But Nico, what you're doing effectively is social selling.
It is.
You've got your audience. You're like, what's the value? Who can I bring on? Who's going to provide a message or whatnot that people? And that is a perfect example of social selling, right? So it's but it's true that there are a lot of people out there that go straight to the self promotion, and that's a pity.
Yes, it is. I think now I'm putting a name onto what I'm doing. At the start of my project with the podcast, it was simply about helping the other person, and then I was, oh, wait a minute, I also have. I can also build my evil plan of meeting awesome people and sharing the things I learn and sharing what other people have learned. So yeah, that's right. I think what the project I've done has transformed a little bit also as social selling in a way. And and then I worked on it. I like to do things right, so I try to do like some personal branding with a color, then with like small montage, and so what would be? I will ask a personal question to an expert. What would be your advices for me going forwards? Like knowing, okay, the difference between trying to promote myself or the person in front of me. I'm willing to do it in the long term for many years. So what would be typically in this situation a question or an advice you would have for me? With the mind, I'm also an athlete with the refereeing that we might talk about later.
Yes, so I think whether it be you or anybody listening, it's important to identify the personal story. So what is my personal story, right, at the end of the day? And the personal story can be something from the past, or it can be very much about what's going on right now. Secondly, we've got to be authentic, right? Yes. People like raw, people like emotion, people like vulnerability. People connect with that. When we're trying to connect with people, connect with an audience, grow an audience, if people don't feel a connection, going to take genuine personal interest into it.
Right.
And that's really important. So I think for example, what you're doing, it's great. It is authentic.
Yes.
There is something raw and very natural about it. It's not too staged or anything like that.
No.
And if you go back to the Mongolian things, it was true that there was pretty much 1 or 2, maybe 3 takes at max. Also because my fingers were freezing when I took my gloves off to take the things. I had to be fast. Last year in Montenegro, I was doing like 30 takes, 25 takes. I was just like, this is not perfect. But actually, perfection is overrated. People don't like perfection. People like that raw. So the feedback I had from Mongolia was like, we could see the emotion, we could see the fatigue, we could see the unshaven, we could see the everything, and they like that, right?
Yes.
And that's authentic. And I think, so going back to your question here, what is it in terms of advice? It's that authenticity, that rawness, the emotion, that people can feel. That's what people get drawn to. It's not some perfect staging of some production or whatever that this is not Hollywood. We don't need it to be. So
absolutely. That's nice. Yeah, because I will share with you 2 things I have in mind regarding what you said and kind of the rules I want to set for the podcast and the project going forward. The first one being AI. Like I think it was this weekend where I saw some like a 3-paragraph text with someone saying he delved into the intricate matter of the subject to have his certificate or something, and you're like I'm also using AI for some projects for brainstorming. Like I know how an AI writes, and you didn't write that yourself, you know. And so that was my first thought. Maybe I was like, okay, like AI as a tool is interesting for different things, but to the human and human contact, this could never be replaced. So never replace it.
Yes.
So that was my first. I don't know if you have reactions to that, but I wanted to, at least to share this first idea I had about personal branding for the future.
Yeah, no. So I think AI. I love technology, and I love AI, and I love how technology can influence us elevate us. But I think that's the key thing. Technology has to support us. It doesn't replace us, and this is what a lot of people make the mistake. They go, okay. So I use AI all the time, right? I use it in my client sessions. I use it sometimes to develop content, not always. Not social media content, because I feel there I lose my authentic voice. Exactly. But for certain things, I'll use it. I'll sometimes write something and ask it to check it, or give me different proposals, but then I'll modify it again, right? I had one client, it was quite interesting in the session. I said, let's check with ChatGPT. And he said, Dominic, what ChatGPT? He said, you're going to be replaced. I said, I'm not going to get replaced. I'm very comfortable with the technology, and we use we use the technology to elevate the session, right?
Yes.
And he said, no, I understand. And so we used it, and he was quite impressed by the results. So I think AI is incredibly powerful. Technology in general can be incredibly powerful. We have to use it right. We mustn't lose our authenticity. And there's so much we can do with a tool like ChatGPT that, sometimes in trainings I'll say, you can use ChatGPT to do X, Y, and Z, whatever it is, right? And as I say ChatGPT, people are like, oh, ChatGPT, here we go. And then they see what we can do, and they go, oh, that's interesting, right?
Yes.
So it's about being able to unlock the tool to elevate, not to lose our authenticity, if that makes sense. But I think from a personal branding perspective, we have to be very clear in terms of what makes us unique.
Yes.
If we so going back to the post you saw, there was a bit of a trend. Everybody wanted to talk about AI at some point. Especially ChatGPT. You're no longer unique if everybody's talking about it. So you got to find something which is unique, which creates value. That social selling element again. And if if everybody's talking about it's not, you lose your authenticity.
Yeah. And also to what you said just previously, like our appeal to stories. Like stories are unique.
Yes.
Like AI can invent stories, but it cannot live it, and it's not you living it, it's not me living it. So yeah, I don't know about you. Since I'm very young, I'm always passionate about stories, and I imagine, in those in France in those times there was like the troubadour going from city to city, earning their money by sharing stories, by saying it to the population. I think it's something that humans like really like to experience through other people. Yeah, and then I wanted also to add the second thing. So the first was a careful use of AI for my personal project in terms of branding. And the other one, at the moment, I'm very uncomfortable with marketing my my podcast. I feel like I can share it on a story or send it to a few WhatsApp friends on WhatsApp, but like putting some money to try to make it grow faster or something. I think because that's not my mindset right now, this would not align with my objectives. So I'm really trying to have a quality conversation, focus on that, and then it grows if it grows. And this also gets me rid of some stress. Yeah. But again, I have the chance to do it as a hobby, so maybe it's different from professionals. Yeah.
But the professionals would have started somewhere, right?
You're right. Yeah.
And I think there is an element of I mean, I think there are a lot of people that do buy traction, buy traffic, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, if the quality is not there, it doesn't work. So I think I think your approach makes a lot of sense. And if it can grow organically, that's the best. But yeah, it's that's my personal opinion. I'm not an expert in that specific area in terms of.
But that's a good point. Perfect. Let's do a small break.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
As the light comes
As
down.
the light comes down. Another theme and that I would like to talk about with you is the theme of allyship, because I saw it also in one of your posts 1 year ago, and I kind of knew what it was from the translation in French, but I wanted to know also what was behind sharing this topic and your involvement in this.
Yeah. So allyship is a term I discovered for the first time in December 2022. And I was talking to my academic director at the University of St. Gallen for the MBA, and she said to me, Dominic, do you know any allies that can talk in our session on, I think it was women in business? And I said, what is allyship? And she said, oh, you don't know what allyship is? Like, no, I don't. She goes, let me explain to you. So she quickly explained it to me. And I was like, that's fascinating. And it totally resonated with me. So allyship is effectively when an individual is coming from a, let's say, a demographic of privilege, okay? How does that person use their privilege to support those people who are coming from a demographic of less privilege? So, for example, in the context of male allyship towards female advancement, we know the data's out there that women have less opportunities to leadership roles. There's a salary gap. I know there's some people that say it's not true. It is very true. The data is out there. How do you create equal opportunity? So in that context, would be more a male allyship. It could be a racial allyship. As a white man, I can use my position of privilege to support people of color. Okay, creating more opportunity. How can I help? So, how can I help them? How can I support them? It can be allyship in the context of somebody's sexuality. As a heterosexual man, how do I support men who are, or women too, who are, let's say, don't associate themselves with maybe being heterosexual? So it can be on many, many different levels. And as I said already a couple of times, I'm a big believer that people are our biggest assets, and diversity. The more diverse we are, the stronger we are. So I do think it's very, very important. How I'm actively involved at the moment, I've actually joined the HBA, Healthcare Businesswomen's Association. So I'm a member there, and I support as one of their advisors on their corporate partners. So that's a fantastic platform I discovered last year. Thanks to my partner Catherine. We went to the European Leadership Summit in Amsterdam. I hope to go to the one in Milan this year, but there's a bit of a conflict on my side, so I need to figure out how I can free myself up. But this concept of allyship is really supporting those people who are maybe in a less privileged position. So as I mentioned already, context of HBA, Healthcare Businesswomen's Association, as a man supporting women in their career advancement. And I find it very, very important, obviously, for diversity reasons, diversity and equity and inclusion. But also, I find it very satisfying, in terms of supporting individuals and in terms of how they can develop. And I think, some of the individuals I've worked with across the range of allyship. So whether it be women or people of color or different, coming from different, how they identify themselves, sexuality or whatnot, it's been incredibly empowering to know that we can actually make a difference and just be very supportive, right? So why did I do the posts last year? Well, I discovered this element of this notion of allyship, this term. I was shocked to discover it was first coined in the 1970s. And I hadn't heard about it. It had been around for longer than I'd been around, and I heard about it for the first time 2 years ago. So I was quite shocked that we weren't talking more about it. And often when I talk to people, sometimes people who've been 20, 25 years in business, 30 years in business, they haven't never heard of it before either. So it's something definitely worth talking more about. To go back to your question, why did I start posting last year? I was looking at generating more content, to be very honest, and content that is important to me is much easier to write about. So it was around March, April that I started to do a series of posts on allyship. It was very much tied into me trying to be more active in creating content on a topic that's important. Also, some of the discussions I had with my kids, my two boys, they were saying to me things like, they said, Papa, there are people their kids at school that say sexist and racial comments. I'm like, well, what do you guys do about it? They're like, what do you want us to do about it? So I said, well, as part of my, I didn't say this to them, I was thinking part of my responsibility as a father is to educate them and to try and eliminate these things from happening in the future. So I said to them, well, saying nothing is just as bad as actually saying it yourself, right? So next time you stand up for the people that are receiving these responses. Now, will they do it? Probably not, because at that age they're under a lot of social pressure. But at least the seed is planted for later in life, and I keep reminding them what's right and wrong. And they're very mindful of that. So anyway, that's a long answer to your question about allyship.
That's a great answer, and I even have like follow-up questions, and because specifically for your children, I think that's also a fascinating period of life where. If we take also the sports example before, the weakest link that drags everyone down, these one or two individuals may be saying absurdities, being uneducated, being too young to understand maybe what they heard from other people. Like if someone stands up at that age, that's already like says big about their like personality, and I can't imagine them growing up. But having seen boys and girls stand up for these values, I think I was impressed and tried then to emulate a bit the same. But I have to say like you sense the leadership of these people when they step up. There's like I want to stand for the right thing, and it links so much to sport in a way. So that's really interesting.
It is, and interesting you talk about leadership, because you can also have toxic leadership, right? So just as you can have you can sense that leadership when somebody stands up for what's right, and what's wrong. You can also have somebody who stands up and influences the group in a negative manner, right? Yes. So it's interesting you should touch on that. Just like in sport, you can have. I mean, I remember playing on teams where you had some phenomenal players, but they were toxic. Yes. Right, and it's difficult because what do you do as a team? What do you do as a coach? Do you get rid of your all-star player when that individual is actually pulls the team down necessarily from the way they play, but in terms of the general mood and atmosphere in the team, right? So kids are very similar. So it's,
we had in a class today. It was mentioned in these sports governing bodies positions. Like who is there, and I learned something that I learned something super interesting. It's not just about having the gender balance or having diversity in those, for example, high spheres in sport business or in companies. But what the professional shared with us, it's also about who is there. So the person in that position or the people in that position, if they're from a majority or from a privileged position, are they still an ally? Even if the group is not diverse, are these people willing to be more inclusive and to fight for like equal opportunity, for diversity, for to stand for what is right. And that was a concept I didn't link. That was new to me because I tried to educate myself on that, but I was like, oh, this is interesting. It's also about, it's not just, I was not just seeing it as a balance, but also as the quality of who's on that balance. And I found it interesting. I learned that today, so I just wanted to share.
Yeah, no, that is interesting. And very often the challenge is the individual feels challenged, if that makes sense. And if the person feels threatened,
Yes.
they're not going to create those equal opportunities for others. So so you're right. The person has to be proactively wanting to see positive change.
Yes.
But for that to happen, the person has not felt challenged.
Yes.
And a lot of, if you're talking about governing bodies and you're looking about how people end up in the positions they end up, they've worked very hard to get where they've needed to get to, but they've worked very hard in, let's say, they've made certain sacrifices, certain political decisions to get them in that role.
Yes.
Now, are they ready to give up all of that to create space for others of different demographics
Yes.
to step in? And very often the answer is no. Now, what I've observed, if I take it down a level back to just like everyday life, when we're talking about, for example, advancing women in the workplace, the people that push back, they feel threatened at the end of the day. They may not be able to put a word to it and say, I feel threatened, and they'll deny it. But ultimately, we are stronger if we have a more diverse group. But if one thinks of ourselves, our individuals, and as individuals, then of course we create much more limitation and anyway, so it's very interesting. It's the psychological element of it. So.
It is, and I can imagine those people in the position of power for so many years. I think for them to change and take the right train, it would take a lot of courage.
Yes.
Because courage and energy and work, because then they have to understand all the diversity that is coming in. Because if you're in your small bubble with the same kind of people, then you have to educate yourself and expose yourself to ways and ways of thinking, of communicating that maybe you didn't have the opportunity to have before. So yeah, there's maybe also a scary element, and I imagine the courage. As for the courage of your young boys to stand up for what's right, the courage to go out there and defend values that you seem are right. Yeah.
Yeah, no. That and the other thing we need to think about is our own unconscious bias. And we all have it. So it's not somebody says, "Oh, I don't have unconscious bias." It's not true.
Yes.
Unconscious bias is formed through our education, formed through our cultural exposure, our life experiences, professional experiences, whatnot. We all have it. It gets really powerful when we start to catch ourselves with the unconscious bias. So I will sometimes have a reaction, and I'll be like, "Stop, Dominic. That's an unconscious bias, right?"
Yes.
I go, "Isn't that interesting? So how can I do this differently?" Right? And when we can start to catch our unconscious bias, then we suddenly become much more an empowered framework, right?
Nice.
So it's very complex, but it's fascinating.
It is, and I think during a lifetime, I can only imagine myself educating myself about those biases and trying to understand them, because I feel it's we're humans, so biases are never going to end, and we just have to deconstruct it, maybe with the help of professionals, of people around us, around that. And talking about helping people, the last subject I might want to talk to you about is another concept I learned for the first time from you, and it's business dating.
Yes.
And so the name is quite catchy, and
yes.
I wanted to know what's behind the name and behind this concept.
So basically, I've been using dating as an analogy, so romantic dating as an analogy to professional networking for some time now. And I would say to people, would you do this in a dating environment? They said no. So why are you doing it in a professional networking environment? And what's really interesting is one day a client sent me something, and I can't remember what it was, and she sent me this term, business dating. She said, "You see, This is what I saw.
Yeah.
And I was like, I told you so, dating and networking. So I thought, okay, let me use this term, business dating. And the reason why it's so effective is that at the end of the day, whether it be romantic dating or professional networking, we're talking about people. We're talking about human interaction. We're talking about building trust.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, when you in the dating scene, you want to build trust with the person in front of you. You want to get to know, can I get on with this person for long enough to get through a conversation without running out the door?
Yeah.
Or is the person going to excuse themselves to go to the bathroom and never come back, right?
Yeah.
So we want to first build that trust to get to know the other person, and also for them to get to know us. So in other words, we go into a date and we ask the other person questions, right? What do they like to do? What keeps them awake at night? What about their dark side? You know, if one's a little bit more playful. In professional networking, very often people become very self-focused, very self-orientated.
Yes.
And there is something called the trust equation. And there are various elements that contribute to building trust. Okay. But the one thing that creates trust erosion, so deteriorates trust, is self-focus, self-orientation. Very similar actually to online promotional content, right? If you're focusing on yourself versus if you're focusing on creating value for the other person. So at the end of the day, you know, whether we are, as I said, professional networking, romantic dating, trust is the only currency that is exchanged but in these two environments. And the parallels are, I find, quite profound. And very often somebody will ask me a question in a professional networking context, I'll be like, okay, let's put this into a dating context. Would you do it? And they're like, no. I was like, okay, then it's not okay in a professional networking context. Yeah. And people laugh. So it's a bit of a way of adding, people get it, because most people have all been on a date of some form of varying levels of success.
Yes.
Other people are more successful than others. But professional networking, a lot of people fail miserably. They really do not get it. Yeah. So people understand the dating. It's quite fun. Okay, and yeah, it's just a nice way to make it much clearer in terms of, am I doing what I'm doing? Does this make sense or not from a professional networking perspective?
Yeah. The part of business and normal casual dating is quite the same. The self-orientation. Now that you say it, I completely agree. Like, breaks the trust. And if it's self-centered, the sport example for me would be, you know, like. At some age, maybe 17, 18 years old, we were focused on our stats as hockey players, because scouts look at the stats, who's putting the scores and everything. And I have to say for myself, but even more for some of my friends, there would be a complete lack of trust when someone doesn't make a pass to another person. And people take it very personally, you know, like, I'm wide open, I have the good position. You don't, you're just trying to do something for yourself. And so maybe that was a small, maybe not very effective or not very straightforward analogy, but I definitely see that you lose the trust in the other person when there's not, like, when there's self-centeredness.
But it's a wonderful example you gave.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, every time we engage with people, at the end of the day, it's about trust. It's about the rapport, that connection. Do we trust the person in front of us or not? And when you go into a team environment, trust is everything. If you don't trust your player, I'm not going to give you a pass. I'm not going to give you a pass because I don't know if I'm ever going to see the puck come back or the ball or whatever it is, whatever sport you're playing. I'm not going to give you the pass if I don't trust that you have the skills to be able to do the right things with it. Okay, normally in professional sport, we all have that level to be able to, from a technical perspective. But you know, you're right, trust is everything. I played at some point for a water polo team here in Lausanne. I played for Lausanne for different moments in my time in Switzerland. And there was one period when I played for them, and it was really horrible because there was a core group of 2 or 3 people that had high trust between them, but no trust in anybody else. And you could create wonderful opportunities, but nothing would happen because the trust just wasn't there. And in a team environment, that is detrimental if the trust is not there. But if the trust is there, I mean, you can go a long way, right? It's even with players that are not necessarily as talented as an opposition, but if they're gelling together, good communication, good trust, and all the rest, it will work well. And at the end of their relationships, whether it be private relationships, romantic relationships, or professional relationships, we are a team, effectively, and we're functioning as a team, right? Communication, trust, and whatnot. Yes. So that's a great example.
I want to thank you for this conversation because you brought a lot of concepts to the human level, and this last example really shows that like the team success is the interaction of individuals and the trust they have in each other. So I want to finish with one last question. And the question is, what is your definition of success?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've thought long and hard about this, actually. And I'm definitely non-linear in the way I think, and I'm not traditional in the way I think. So if I look at success for me, it's about freedom. Freedom doesn't mean doing whatever I want, whenever I want. Well, maybe a little bit, but it's more about saying, I have the time now to go and I need to be there for my kids. I can drive them to school, or I can drive them to a sports practice, or whatever it is. Freedom means I want to spend now, have lunch with my partner, or take an afternoon off without having to report back to somebody. Freedom means saying, hey, Nico, let's go for one of those walks and we walk and talk, right?
Yes.
Which was very profound when I first met you and we did our first chat together and you said, can we walk? And I was like, this is fantastic. Of course we can walk. It's like right up my alley, it's not, a lot of people don't want to walk and talk. So it was very, very refreshing.
Small advice for the next time you meet Domi, if you want really a good opportunity, propose the walk and talk. This is maybe people that meet you, or if they have meeting, they have to come with you with the walk and talk.
Okay,
now, if they listen to this is the rule. So you can have more like
walk and talk. Good, thank you, Nick. That leg up. It's
sorry I interrupted.
Yeah, no, it was good. It was good. So I think for me, it's really around freedom, and the reason why I say it's non-traditional is so many people when they look at success, it's about what title do I have at work? I don't care about title. How much money do I earn? I don't care about earning money. Yes, of course I need enough to pay my bills and to be comfortable, but otherwise I don't care about how much I earn. Do I have the house and the white picket fence and all the rest? I couldn't care about that, right? It's really, how do I manage my time? Can I travel? I love traveling. Yeah. So at the moment I'm in a position where I can travel quite a lot. I can work from anywhere, pretty much. I have to obviously be physically from time to time in Lausanne or in St. Gallen, but I can work from pretty much anywhere. I can travel. I can have freedom. I can, I can do the things I love to do. I like to remain active, and so I can, I can go for a swim at lunch if I want to go for a swim at lunch. I can go for a run. I can, so that sort of freedom that I was so looking for, I have. One of the reasons why I was looking for it so badly is that I started getting quite stressed in my former job when I was working for the ASTS, that if I didn't have control of my situation. In other words, yes, I was happy. I loved the team, loved the work, loved working with the students, loved engaging with the industry. I was comfortable. I wasn't challenged, but the other thing anymore, because I'd been there for a long time. But the other problem was, what if something happened and for whatever reason I lost my job? You never know. I would be it's completely out of my control. And with the portfolio career, it's given me that freedom, because I can lose a contract or two or three and I'm still okay. If I lose three, I've got to stop being careful. But the point being, I'm not a slave to a system anymore. And that's what when I talk about freedom, it's about breaking free of the system. That I find incredibly toxic. And working in outplacement, where I pick up people who've been dropped by the system. And as we've said many times, people are the biggest asset, but very often companies are short-sighted and they will release people for various reasons. And it's not performance-based reasons. Yeah. It's really based on save money here, cut costs here, do this, do that, whatever, merge roles together. And when you start to lose key asset, people with so much experience, so much everything, and in some cases, the system has failed them, and then it's rewarding supporting them through that process, because there's a psychological dip they go through very often. But at the same time, I'm like, wow, this is what I was nervous about several years ago, 7, 8 years ago, and I've managed to avoid it, right? Yeah. Whether I ever would have entered that situation, I don't know. But I didn't want to wait and leave fate to out of my hands, basically.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, that was a great definition of success. You even closed the loop with the beginning of the conversation. So yeah, I want to thank you with your freedom for the time you gave me for this awesome conversation. And hope to see you around for a new walk and talk anytime soon.
With great pleasure, and thank you, Nico, for organizing this. It's a fantastic initiative that you've got going, and I wish you every success. And it's just been great talking to you, as it always is.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.